Hi, I'm Renee Tucci, and today we're going to create a line design featuring the mirroring technique. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the setup for today's design. I'm working with this wooden container. It's a 4x4x10 wooden container. It's got a plastic liner inside of it, and I've set one block of floral foam in it that has been soaked, and it is filled with water, so it is ready to go. Now, we're creating a line design today, and that just means that the element of line is more dominant over form, as in form of shape. So it's not necessarily triangle or some other kind of shape. It's really a dominant look at the element of line and how line flowers direct the eye through a design. Now, also keep in mind when we make a line design that negative space is usually very prominent, and that's just the area between elements, or I should say between materials, that is purposely left empty. It is void of materials. It is planned empty space within a composition to allow the eye to rest and really appreciate the materials that are around the negative space. So let's get started here. I'm going to first start with this line branch. This is Pussy Willow, as you may know, or Salix. And this is particularly tall and beautiful. We're just coming into spring now, so I'm very excited to see these coming back on the market. And I want my line to be a little bit exaggerated here. So I'm going to go through and find the best branches, and I'm actually going to cut what I need, all the branches at once, so that I can save a little bit of time. Okay, now I've found in my bunch that I have 4 beautiful stems like this, and I have 2 stems that are a little bit branched or forked. So that's exciting because we're creating a line design, but I also want to focus on mirroring. And that's the technique where we do placement of materials in groups that are directed towards one another or facing one another. So everything I do on the left side of the design or one side of the design, I want to repeat on the right. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind as I'm choosing my materials so that I have an equal balance. Now, as I said, I want to cut these all at once, but I also want to keep it within the camera shot for you here. So I'm going to hold this and decide that right about here is where I want to cut my branches, so I'll give those a snip. Okay, and now I can start placing them in. I want these to be all the way to the edge of my foam, and if you have any buds, we can peel those off of the stem so we have a nice clean stem that's going to go into our foam. And here we go. We've got our third forked piece in there. Now, these branches have a natural turn to them, some of them. Some of them are not straight up and down. So you want to make sure you place it in the foam to overcompensate for that, and make sure that you are creating the line that you really want to create. So if, for example, if I wanted to place this forked branch that has a piece going this way, if I changed that and moved it going outwards or even completely the opposite direction, that would really change the way that the eye moves through the design. In this case, I want to mirror one side to the other as much as I can. Of course, all of our botanical materials they're like snowflakes. Each one is a little bit different, so they're not going to be exactly the same, but here we have a bit of a mirroring situation going. These 2 branches are facing each other, and they're also creating a bit of a canopy or a shelter over the midpoint of our design. I'm going to add to this line, this very strong line that we've just created, some bells of Ireland. Now, these are sometimes referred to as a foliage, sometimes as a flower, but either way, their chartreuse green color is really wonderful to use in all types of designs. Now, I don't want to overpower this. our strong line with the bells. I want to just enhance it. So what I'm going to do is actually defoliate a lot of my branch. I'm going to take off a lot of the flowers that are on the stem, and then I'm going to go back through and actually remove each in-between section. So I'll establish my bottom, and then in between every other, I'm going to remove those bells, we'll call them. That's going to help increase the negative space that I have in this design, so that when I put them in, again, they're enhancing the line, they're not overpowering it. Okay, now I've got my bells of Ireland in here helping to establish the really strong line that we have on the right and the left side of our design, creating, again, a very strong line design, and starting with that mirroring technique. Now I'm going to add in a pink lily on each side of our mirror, and I want to face these flowers so that they are facing themselves. Facing is a technique where we actually position a flower that has more of a face or a focal area, and we're going to take it and we're going to face them towards each other. This is also very commonly seen when you see a field of sunflowers stretching up towards the sun. Those faces of the sunflowers are looking in that direction or facing in that direction. So we are going to do that with our lilies here today. Now I want to keep this as clean as possible, so I'm actually going to remove the side buds that are on the lily and just keep that one open bloom that's on our lily stem. That's what's going to go up into our canopy. And I'm cutting all of my stems on a nice angle, and I'm just going to layer this into the side lines. Okay, so now I've got both of my lilies in here. This particular stem had a bit more of a bend to it, so as I added it into the foam, I had to put the bottom part of the stem in on an angle, as I said, to overcompensate for that natural stem bend. I'm going to go ahead and take a third lily and the extra buds that I had from the two stems that I clipped off, and I'm going to add a cluster of those down in the center and start to build our focal area, because the strong lines on each side are going to guide the eye down to the center area, so therefore we should have a wonderful surprise waiting there for the viewer to take in, and a strong focal point or an area of emphasis will do just that. Okay, we're starting to build our focal area here. I do intend for this design to be viewed from all around, so I am keeping that in mind as I'm designing it. I want to add to our focal area, and I've got a beautiful stem of Protea here. And now normally I wouldn't say to use just one of something. We like to repeat our elements or our materials so that the viewer knows that it's not a mistake, that it's meant on purpose, whatever it is we're repeating, and we're creating a pattern with that, which is one of our important elements of design. However, when you have one specialty flower and you're setting that right in the center as your focal, that's when you can get away with just doing one of something. These stems are a little thicker, so I'm going to go ahead and clip this with my cutters, my bunch cutters, peel away the leaves that are left on the stem, and I'm going to anchor it in really well right down bottom center. And then to create some interest on the opposite side, I have two stems of Leucadendron here, which are also in the Protea family, so that creates some harmony between our materials that we're working with. And I'm going to group those on the other side down low with the rest of the lily buds that I have layered in as well. And if I layer these properly, I can make use of the shadowing technique. And that technique is when you layer one material just beneath the other, and when you do that, you create a sense of a shadow, which gives the viewer a sense of a third dimension or depth, which of course is a secondary principle under the primary principle of rhythm. So it's very important in design when you create depth, and using the shadowing technique is one way to do that. Now that I have a strong line design formed here and a strong focal emphasis area, let's finish off the bottom with some top treatments. And I'd like to do that with some Aspidistra, which is a large leaf, but I want to manipulate it to give it a bit of interest. So I'm going to take my scissors and right along the back, about 2 inches up from the base of the leaf, I'm just going to cut a small slit right across the vein. Then I will pull at that area until I reach almost the top of the leaf. And that basically opens up a center area in the leaf. I'm just going to take this piece that I pulled up and twist it back a few times on itself and bring it down to where it meets the beginning of where the leaf and the stem meet. I will then hold them in place together with a 1/2 inch floral tape. And there are some tricks to using the floral tape. I will drop a link in the section below for my video on how to use floral tape, so keep an eye out for that. But once you've secured the Aspidistra back in place solidly with the stem itself, you can then add it into the base. And now look at the interest and the movement that that's really creating. So I have a few of these ready to go here, and each one is a little bit different. And they're not only going to bring some interest down to the bottom, but they're also going to bring some width to the base. Okay, now when we give the arrangement a spin, you can see I've got those manipulated Aspidistra leaves all around the perimeter at our base. And then to cover our floral foam mechanic, I'm just going to top it off with some black river rocks. Okay, we have our piece finished here. Our mechanic has been topped off with the black river rock, which is a nice clean finish to allow the elements in the design to really stand out. And let's just quickly review what we made here. A strong line design, line being the element that creates the path for the eye to move through the arrangement. So the eye starts at the top, travels down here, and lands on our focal area, which is built up with the lilies and the protea. We used the mirroring technique where we repeated what we did on the right and on the left and faced these lilies so that they are towards each other, emphasizing that mirroring effect even more. So I hope you've learned a tip or technique and that you go out and create.